Good morning. Good morning. 2016, can you believe it?
Just like my car.
My name is Ian Oliva-Reed, and it is my privilege to serve as your worship associate today. The theme of January, a theme that will orient the next 5 sermons, is nonviolence. And when Reverend Kent mentioned the theme, I was intrigued. I approached it as an academic might. I teach at a local college, so it's in my DNA to do this. But when I looked at it today, I felt that there was too much distance. It wasn't honest. I didn't have the emotion. And I think I was reminded of this because just yesterday, Chanel and I realized that we cannot find something of much value to us. Now, it may not be permanently lost, but this realization caused fear, sadness, some anger. And it was a reminder to me how a family can be like a small flotilla of ships bound together with rope. A storm hits on the sea, the ships bump and hit, the ropes stretch and fray. When we think of violence, we often think of the physical harm that occurs between strangers. Those distant war-torn places, Syria and Ukraine. But what is violence really? Shouldn't we know what it is to know what nonviolence is? These raise some very prickly and difficult questions. How can we not be violent to ourselves when fear, sadness, and anger are emotions that are natural, that we are not to suppress? How can we be not violent in a community when we have different perspectives and different motives? How can we be not violent in a world when, according to our glorious 7th principle, we are to respect the interdependent web of all existence? Dependencies require destruction. We must plow the earth. We must eat that which is alive. So I suspect the next few weeks will be a fascinating and important exploration of these kinds of questions. And so thank you for letting me worship with you at the cusp of this new year. We welcome whoever you are and wherever you are on your journey. As a home for liberal spirituality, we are grateful for the religious pluralism that expands our vision and deepens our understanding. Our principles remind us to honor reason and difference and to respect and foster social justice, social action, and compassion. Welcome to Tapestry, a Unitarian Universalist congregation. If you are a Facebook user, please be sure to check in and consider sharing something meaningful. And now, would you please take a moment to silence mobile phones and other devices that might be disruptive to our worship time together. Also, to help maintain a contemplative atmosphere, please hold your applause until after the postlude and the service is completed. We are a welcoming congregation, and we extend a warm greeting to any newcomers. We invite those of you who are visiting for the first or second time, if you are brave doing so, to please stand and introduce yourselves so we can have an opportunity to get to know you. Any newcomers among us? Thank you, Connie, Carolyn. Is it Lori?
Yes.
Jim, Marilyn, thank you for standing. We invite you all and any other newcomers to please stop by the greeters table to pick up an informational packet. We invite everyone to join us after the service for conversation and refreshments served out on our patio. If you've been coming for a while but are not yet a member and you feel that you've found a spiritual home with us, please talk to our minister, Reverend Kent, a member of our membership committee, or someone at the greeters table about becoming a member. We heartily welcome everyone. So now please extend a greeting to those sitting near you. It is wonderful. It is wonderful to hear the joyous sounds of friendship and communion, and we can carry on our conversation over refreshments after the service. But now let's continue. Well, there's always exciting events coming up at Tapestry. You could find these in order of service. We do have one announcement from Dave Gearing, and he's going to come up and tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you, and good morning and Happy New Year, everyone. Perhaps you've been reading in your order of service that we have another Readers Theater event coming up, February 14th, Valentine's Day. It's entitled Love Letters. How appropriate. And we would like to extend a special invitation to you. If you've ever thought you might want to be involved in our Readers Theater presentations, now would be the time. There's no memorization, which is a relief for many of us. Auditions will be held next Sunday, the 10th, and the following Sunday, the 17th. You won't be required to stay too long, and we will provide your script at that time. We will require you to come to 3 rehearsals. We want to make sure this is really good. We have 13 people involved this time, which is quite a few. There are some people who have expressed an interest already, but again, I'd like to extend a special invitation to you. You'd have to come to rehearsal the 24th, the 31st, and the 7th. Any questions, you can see me or Mickey Jackson following the service. And we'd like to see some new faces. That would be really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Our various groups and events reflect our vision of being a transformational home for liberal spirituality and a dynamic community leader in Orange County and beyond. And now, Ellen DeYoung, Ellen, will light our flaming chalice, the central symbol of our Unitarian Universalist heritage. Each morning we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, and give back. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to the community, and to each other.
Into this home we bring our hunger for awakening. We bring compassionate hearts and a will toward justice. Into this home, we bring the courage to walk on after hard losses. We bring our joy and gratitude for ordinary blessings. By our gathering, we bless this place. In its shelter, we know ourselves blessed. Welcome to Tapestry. Welcome to our time to be together in worship. On Sundays as we gather, it's not just to celebrate the words of ancient prophets, but to remember our own lives and the major events that shape them. Some of us do that by silently lighting a candle. I see there are a lot today. We also have a lot of spoken messages to share today. It has been a big holiday, I think. From Susan and Richard Jajelko, this one came in via email. They said, "We celebrate the birth of our great-granddaughter, Kelsey, born Christmas Day in Phoenix. Her parents both are students at Arizona State University." Congratulations to Susan and Richard. Rebecca Lindelof, there you are, Says, please say a prayer for Josephine Cabaron. Is that okay? Who lost her battle with cancer yesterday. She's survived by her children, Lucille and Jocelyn, and grandchildren, Sarah, Gregory, and Noah. Josephine is the mother of Rebecca's best friend. We have Lauren Schmid. I can share in this, having seen a few of the Facebook pictures, says that it was such a joy to see the happy faces of our senior high youth after their New Year's celebration up at Debinaville Pines. It looked like a great time. Sue, if you haven't met, Sue is our substitute musician frequently now, so thank you. Sue shares with us, Carolyn Miller, as a dear friend, is struggling with leukemia and kidney failure. We will keep her in our thoughts and prayers. Susan and David Deering are so pleased to announce the birth of their grandson, Grayson, a wonderful name, on December 28th. Mother and baby are doing well. Congratulations. And one more. Laura Jackson celebrates the birth of Ollie Ann Spraker, thank you, on December 29th at 4:28. She's 7 pounds, 15 ounces, 20 inches, thriving at home. This, for if you haven't put this together, this is Tatiana's baby. Yay! And we'll be seeing her soon. So congratulations. Would you all join me now in reading our congregational response? For your joys, we join you in celebration. For your sorrows and concerns, may you feel our compassion. For all that is spoken and unspoken, may the caring of our beloved community sustain you. And now I have a story for our young and young at heart. If you want to come join me up front. It's amazing how you all come out of the woodworks. I didn't think there were very many children here today, but this is awesome. You were hiding. So this morning's story is a story about a girl named Ruby Bridges. I pulled some pictures from the internet. I wanted to do that to remind us that Ruby Bridges is a real girl, not just an animated picture in a picture book. So our first picture is of her as a little girl. There we go. So that's Ruby as a little girl. Ruby Bridges was born in a small cabin near Tylertown, Mississippi. She says, we were poor. We were very, very, very poor. My daddy worked picking crops. We just barely got by. There were times when we didn't have much to eat. The people who owned the land were bringing in machines to pick the crops, so my daddy lost his job, and that's when we had to move. I remember us leaving. I was 4, I think. In 1957, the family moved to New Orleans. Ruby's father became a janitor. Her mother took care of the children during the day. After they were tucked into bed, Ruby's mother went to work scrubbing floors in a bank. Every Sunday, the family went to church. We wanted our children to be near God's Spirit, Ruby's mother said. We wanted them to start feeling close to God from the very start. There they are at home. Back up a little bit, Tom. Okay, no, go to the second picture. We're good. Sorry. I'll tell you where to go. At that time, that came out wrong. At that time in New Orleans, black children and white children went to separate schools. The black children were not able to receive the same education as white children. It wasn't fair, and it was against the nation's law. In 1960, a judge ordered 4 black girls to go to white elementary schools. 3 girls were sent to Dono, 19. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges, though, was sent to first grade in William Frantz Elementary School. Ruby's parents were proud that their daughter had been chosen to take part in an important event in American history. They went to church. "We sat there and prayed to God," Ruby's mother said, "that we'd all be strong and we'd have courage and we'd get through any trouble. And Ruby would be a good girl and she'd hold her head up high and be a credit to her own people and a credit to all the American people. We prayed long and hard." So our third picture. Again, I wanted to pick these out because you see these pictures sort of look cartoonish, but this is all very real. On Ruby's first day, a large crowd of angry white people gathered outside of her elementary school. The people carried signs that they said they didn't want black children in a white school. People called Ruby names. Some wanted to hurt her. The city and state police did not help Ruby. The President of the United States, though, ordered federal marshals to walk with Ruby into the school building. The marshals carried guns. Every day for weeks that turned into months, Ruby experienced that kind of school day. She walked into her elementary school surrounded by marshals, wearing a clean dress and a bow in her hair, and carried her lunch pail. Ruby walked slowly for the first few blocks. As Ruby approached the school, she saw the crowd of people marching up and down the street. Men and women and children shouted at her. They pushed toward her. The marshals kept them from Ruby by threatening to arrest them. Ruby would hurry through the crowd and not say a word. And our fourth picture. The white people in the neighborhood would not send their children to school. When Ruby got inside the building, she was all alone except for her teacher, Mrs. Henry. There were no other children to keep Ruby company, to play with or to learn with or to eat lunch with. Every day, Ruby went into the classroom with a big smile on her face, ready to get down to the business of learning. She was polite and she worked well at her desk. Mrs. Henry said she enjoyed her time there. She didn't seem nervous or anxious or irritable or scared. She seemed as normal and relaxed as any child I've ever thought. So Ruby began learning how to read and write in an empty classroom in an empty building. Can you imagine going to school all alone? It'd be pretty weird. Sometimes I'd look at her and wonder how she did it, her teacher said. How she went by those mobs and sat there all day by herself and yet seemed so relaxed and comfortable. Mrs. Henry would question Ruby in order to find out if the girl was really nervous or afraid even. But Ruby kept saying that she was doing fine. The teacher decided to wait and see if Ruby would keep up going so relaxed and hopeful if she didn't gradually begin to wear down. Then one morning, something happened. Mrs. Henry stood by the window in her classroom, as she usually did, watching Ruby walk toward the school. And suddenly Ruby stopped. Right there in front of all the mob of howling and screaming people. Ruby stood there facing all these men and women, and she seemed to be talking to them. Mrs. Henry saw Ruby's lips moving and wondered what Ruby could be saying, and the crowd seemed ready to kill her. The marshals were frightened. They tried to persuade Ruby to keep moving along. They tried to hurry her into the school, but Ruby wouldn't budge. Then Ruby stopped talking and walked into the school. When she went into her classroom, Mrs. Henry asked her what happened. Mrs. Henry told Ruby that she'd been watching and that she was surprised when Ruby stopped and talked to the people in the mob. And Ruby became a little irritated. "I didn't stop and talk to them," she said. "Ruby, I saw your mouth moving," Mrs. Henry said. "I saw your lips moving." "I wasn't talking," said Ruby. "I was praying. I was praying for them." Every morning, Ruby had stopped a few blocks away from school to say a prayer for the people who hated her. This morning, she forgot until she was already in the middle of that angry mob. And our last picture, or the fifth picture. Great. When school was over for the day, Ruby hurried through the mob as usual. After she walked a few blocks and the crowd was behind her, Ruby said the prayer that she repeated twice a day, before and after school. That prayer was, "Please God, try to forgive those people. Because even if they say those bad things, they don't know what they're doing. So could you forgive them?" That's the end of our story. I have one more picture for you, which is Ruby Bridges as an adult. It was important to share this picture because Ruby's all grown up now, but she's still doing what she can to fight for the rights of everyone. I'm not sure how old she is now, but, well, this was in 1957, I think. If you want to do the math, you can probably do that better than me. So she's an adult, and she's still caring for people and fighting for people's rights. So there ends our story. Have a good class, and we'll see you in a little bit.
When Reverend Ked told me he was talking about community today, I was struggling to think of something to play, and my mind went to the micro level of community, the individual relationships, and my mind went to also then, my mind goes to places, Ken asked me to play, that the interesting Buddhist notion that when you meet someone, to think that that person in one of their incarnations and one of your incarnations was your mother. There's something about that, even though I'm not sure if I believe in reincarnation, there's something that I really love about that lets me, at least momentarily, let go of my own identification with the capital I of who I am and let go of any impressions or judgments of other people. And that took me to this old song by Harry Chapin. When you get to parts that you recognize, feel free to sing along. I've added to it. I'm sure Harry won't mind since he died in 1984. Breathing in, breathing out, reaching in, reaching out, words of welcome. Come back in, no matter who you are or where you've been. And all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime until the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, and I do know why. Seasons spinning around me and the years keep rolling by. Breathing in, breathing out, reaching in, and reaching out and out and out. Seems like I've been here before. Can't remember when. I get this funny feeling that we'll all be together again. No straight lines make up my life, and all my roads have bends. No clear-cut beginnings and so far no dead ends. Breathing in, breathing out, reaching in and reaching out. wheel. Look into your neighbor's eyes. What do you feel? I met you 1,000 times and I guess you've done the same. Then we lose each other. It's like a children's game. But as I stand before you now, the thought comes to my mind that love is like a circle. Let's go round one more time. And all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the night time until the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, and I do know why. Seasons spinning round me and the years keep rolling by. Breathing in, breathing out, reaching in, reaching out and out and out, breathing in, breathing out, reaching in and reaching out and out and out and out.
Let us join together for a short time of quiet meditation. Settle into your seat, relax, and take a moment to be in gratitude for this new year and this community of hope. Namaste. Amen, and blessed be. As Ian explained earlier, all this month we're focusing on nonviolence in our worship services. I'm personally looking forward to diving into this topic a little bit more. I think much more along the lines that Ian was suggesting than I even realized he was going to talk about. To tell the truth, I'm not certain that I am completely committed to nonviolence, and my colleagues would probably be very upset to hear me say this publicly. But I've seen too many cases in history where power had to be forcibly taken from an oppressor. The movement for LGBT rights first gained traction in the United States with a riot in New York City when a community decided to fight back against police brutality. And the abhorrent institution of slavery here ended by the force of war. Now, while King and Gandhi became icons for change, behind each of those figures there was a palpable threat of violent revolt. And the peaceful change that King and Gandhi offered was really a much more palatable solution than armed rebellion. I'm not advocating violent revolt. Please understand that. I'm just being honest that nonviolence is not a stance that I take for granted. It's something that I'm thinking very seriously about this month. I still have major questions about its efficacy in the past. And real nonviolence, the kind that changes the world, is a commitment much deeper and more dangerous than most of us are willing to make. Now, as we look at nonviolence this month, we're going to go in reverse order, starting with the end. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is one of the later embodiments of the nonviolent movement, and he spoke about the beloved community as a vision for the goal of nonviolence. So we're starting our exploration of nonviolence with the end goal. Dr. King was very methodical in his understanding of nonviolence. He believed that teaching to people to live by these very specific and concise principles was essential to creating change. He had 6 principles of nonviolence. Today I'm going to dive into understanding the beloved community, and I'm going to jump around those principles a little bit. So let's start with the second one. It states that nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. The end result of nonviolence is redemption and reconciliation. The purpose of nonviolence is the creation of beloved community. There we have it. The purpose of nonviolence is the creation of beloved community. It's a very clear end goal. Now, having a goal adds context to our day-to-day struggles. It reminds us of what the end of this struggle is. That we, all of us, are still going to be here. White people and people of color, straight people and lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered people, disabled people and temporarily abled people, American-born and immigrant people of various faiths. After struggling for justice, we still have to get along with each other. Until we can sit down together and work things out peacefully, then the struggle will continue. It reminds me a lot of a fight within a marriage or within a family. And let's be honest, there are fights within marriage, there are fights within families and relationships of all sorts. Conflict is part of our experience. And when we think we're right, we want to win. Conflict is actually not a bad thing, but you can get yourself in big, big trouble if you fight to win the one fight today. If you're more invested in winning the fight than you are in the relationship, then your relationship is not going to survive. Period. On the other hand, if you fight remembering that your goal is mutual supportive relationship, then you have a chance. The fight might even move you toward something other than resentment or hurt feelings. The fight might help you work out some of the problems. We have to temper our disagreements, remembering that we're still going to have to share this life together. That's the beloved community on a much smaller scale. We also know that the perfect relationship doesn't arise from never disagreeing about anything. If you back down all the time, waiting for the perfect relationship, you're going to be disappointed. It doesn't magically happen. And beloved community, mutually respectful human community, doesn't just happen. It takes work. Too often we think of nonviolence as a political strategy. It is that, but it's a whole lot more, too. That's why we can spend a whole month on it. It's more than responding to the police without using force. It's a framework for building compassionate families and friendship. It's a model for our congregational life. Nonviolence is a way of understanding our world and the way we care for ourselves in it. Well, Dr. King was a theologian at heart. We see him as a political figure, but he was definitely a theologian. We can't understand him without understanding his ideas behind the beloved community. And his idea resonates with a lot of our own Unitarian Universalist theology. Universalism historically meant that God would never condemn a person to eternal punishment for their sins. It meant that if anyone is saved, then we all are. No one is so much better or so much worse than anyone else. Now, more recently, as our focus shifts from divine punishment and reward to managing this life, healing this world, universalism points us to the fact that we're all in this together. Dr. King spoke of an inescapable network of mutuality and a single garment of destiny. We speak of universal salvation in this life. Beloved, community happens when all are welcome at the table. It's an expansive vision. It's universal. Healing comes through reaching out, not building walls. As I started to dive into this idea of beloved community this week, I was surprised to see how misunderstood it is within our Unitarian Universalist tradition. To be fair, I was part of that misunderstanding. And there's a whole section in the back of our hymnals, a section of songs and readings that's supposed to be about beloved community. Nearly all of it, though, refers to a particular Unitarian gathering on a Sunday morning. Beloved community, though, is more than a gathering of people who know each other and love each other. It's an ideal. It's something that we are striving for, not just for us here, but for the wider world. And it's not just about loving and being nice, it's about forgiving one another for profound sins. It's about reconciling after brokenness. I'm glad that we try to use that language of beloved community to honor the expansive vision that Dr. King spoke of, though we should be very careful what we are claiming, especially when we call a single congregation a beloved community. Until we hold potlucks for Saddleback Church and the LGBT Community Center, for the Orange County Sheriff's Department and our black and brown neighbors, until we create a space where lions lie down with lambs, we still have a long way to go. Beloved community means everyone is invited to forgive and be forgiven. Everyone. And that's a terrifyingly huge undertaking. Dr. King's theology connects with ours in another way. We believe that courageous love will transform the world. That's what I spoke about on Christmas Eve, our faith that human compassion is more powerful than the forces of war. We stand by the most vulnerable in society because we believe our salvation rests in the human ability to meet brokenness with compassion. More than the power of physical force or scientific innovation, even more than the intervention of some act of God, our capacity to heal the world and ourselves rests in our ability to meet vulnerability with compassion. We will stand by the most vulnerable, even at personal risk. We believe that courageous love will transform the world. Dr. King also taught about the role of courageous love in nonviolence. His fifth principle holds that suffering can educate and transform. Suffering can educate and transform. If you're familiar with American history in the slightest, you have a sense of the suffering that activists willingly underwent in the civil rights movement. The recent movie Selma explores some of that suffering, and our story today did as well. The passage of the Civil Rights Act and the end of segregation in the South happened because Americans saw the brutality of police and the suffering of the black community. Like Dr. King, we believe that courageous love will heal the world. Not comfortable and easy love, but courageous love, love that risks something, will be transformative. Now, learning from our history, I think, is very important. We're doing a lot of that this month. But we also have to pay attention to what's going on in our world today. The civil rights movement from the past focused mostly on ending segregation and protecting the right to vote. Today, the movement aims at ending mass incarceration, police brutality, and systemic racism. Yesterday and today, the goals are sadly very similar. They both take nonviolent action, but the tone between those two movements is very different. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wore his education and his religious credentials as a proof of his legitimacy in the world. He wore a suit as his coat of armor. His brilliant mind used a language that white America was able to understand, even if it didn't agree. He was the model of respectability, and so were the other leading civil rights leaders. The Black Lives Matter movement, on the other hand, has let go of respectability politics. You won't find many suits in the movement today. And instead of leading the movement, churches are scrambling to keep up with activists. Today's vision of the beloved community is different. It believes in reconciliation and friendship based on appreciation of differences, not sameness. Today, beloved community means a place where we are each welcome as we are. It's not a community where everyone aims to look alike or sound alike. It's a place of forgiveness and reconciliation, an invitation to be our full, unique, beautiful selves. I think the Black Lives Matter movement casts a desperately needed new vision for the beloved community. Dr. King focused on reconciliation and friendship, but his foundation for those goals was finding common ground, similarity, sameness, a culture that we could all subscribe to and be comfortable. Today's leaders perhaps aim at a higher goal. This more outspoken movement can be intimidating to join in. The chants of no justice, no peace, no racist police, and if we don't get it, shut it down, referring to shutting down business as usual for government agencies and places of commerce. These chants make us wonder if there is room for us in this movement to be supportive. This is not your grandfather's civil rights movement, I've heard said, where preachers marched in suits. Still, we are called to engage with it. I mentioned earlier the fifth principle of nonviolence, that suffering can educate and transform. The catch to that principle, though, is that it can only educate and transform those who witness it. We may not have tremendous power in our lives, but we can bear witness to suffering around us. We may not be able to wave our magic wand and make it all go away, but we can pay attention. We can read the stories and listen to the voices and pay attention to the realities of suffering around us. If we are who we are, if we claim to stand on the side of love, we have to keep our hearts open to suffering. Now, building beloved community is not as simple as our hymnals suggest. Dr. King's very first principle of nonviolence is that it's a way of life for courageous people. It's an active, nonviolent resistance to evil. The very first principle says that it's a way of life for courageous people. It requires a level of what I'm going to call spiritual maturity. And maturity doesn't just happen with age. Our hero from earlier, Ruby Bridges, found her strength to build the beloved community through her prayer. For a lot of the black community during the civil rights movement, the courage to love came from their faith in God. Before I finish, I want to encourage you to think about what might encourage you to participate in such radical forgiveness and reconciliation. I'm not asking you to believe in God, but you have to believe in something to open your heart, to love courageously. Maybe you hold on to the Buddha's model of compassion and the Buddhist journey to eliminate the illusions of separateness between us. Maybe you're a pragmatist, and the principles of nonviolence are enough to convince you that this is the method to follow through, to reach our goals. I also think that our Unitarian Universalist faith offers a pretty compelling argument. It's an argument hopefully strong enough to move us toward opening our hearts. Knowing deep down that every soul is sacred and worthy, knowing that courageous love will transform the world, knowing that there is a unity that makes us one, brings us to a table of reconciliation and forgiveness. Beloved community is hard, scary, painful, dangerous, revolutionary work. It's our work if we take our faith seriously and if we care about the bodies and souls of our neighbors. Amen. We extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of friendship, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And would you join hands with someone near you for these closing words? Stretch, stretch. We're all longing to go home to some place we've never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned we can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats, arms to hold us when we falter, a circle of healing. We're all longing for a beloved community, and we're all called to the work of creating it. Now go in peace and let the light within you be a blessing to the world.